is doing the startup, so it'll be maybe 30 seconds and we'll be live.
Okay. So do we count down 10, 9, 8?
We are live.
We are live. Great, thank you. Good morning. My name is Michael Brennan, and I'm a state representative and represent District 36, which is part of Portland. I'm the House Chair of the Education and Cultural Affairs Committee. Today, we are meeting as a committee. We're meeting by Zoom, which is now the protocol that we will be following at least for the next month in the House. We have an agenda today that includes some staff reports as well as reports from the Department of Education. And we're hoping that we will be able to conclude most of the work that we have from the committee between 12 and 1 o'clock today. I'm also pleased to recognize and pleased that we have with us several representatives from the Department of Education that will help us work through several reports and potentially have a number of recommendations on key issues that we'll be looking at this session. This is streamed live on YouTube, so I remind members of the committee as well as members of the public that we do have a live audience. And before we get started with any formal business, I'd like to start with introductions from members of the committee, and we will start with Senator Whitsom.
Thank you. Dave Whitsom, District 33. I have Sanford, Massabesic, and Sockeye Valley School Districts, and glad to be here.
Good morning. And next we have Senator Daughtry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning. I'm Senator Maddie Daughtry. I represent House District 24, and I represent the communities of Brunswick, Harpswell, North Yarmouth, Freeport, and Pownell. I do apologize for two things. I do have another meeting, so I'll be jumping back and forth. And yesterday was spent with an emergency vet visit, so I might have to jump off occasionally to take care of our puppy, just to let everyone know. Or if you see a puppy come flying through the screen more than usual, that's what's going on. Excited to be back and good to see you all.
Thank you. And I'll now turn to our furthest north member, Representative McCray.
That wasn't hard for me to guess. Anyway, I'm Dave McCray. I live in Fort Fairfield in central Aroostook County. Happy New Year, everybody. I hope we're off to I know we're off to a good start. And we're going to make the most of this and go from there. So it's glad to be back in action.
Thank you. Good to see you, Dave. Representative Dodge.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning. My name is Jan Dodge. I represent House District 97, which is Belfast, Northport, and Waldo. Happy New Year, everyone.
And Representative Crockett.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Ed Crockett, District 43, which is part of Portland and part of Falmouth. Very excited to be back at work.
And Representative Salisbury.
Good morning, everyone. I am Sue Salisbury. I represent House District 35, which is part of Westbrook, and I'm glad to see you all again and get back to work.
Good to see you. Representative Stearns.
Good morning. My name is Paul Stearns. I live in Guilford and represent House District 119, which consists of 12 towns in the unorganized territories of Piscataquis County.
Great. And Representative Roach.
Morning, everyone. I'm Representative Tim Roach from District 7 Wells. Just so you know, I will wear a mask. I'm in school right now, and I will be in and out like Senator Daughtry. A lot of things going on in schools right now, so I get pulled out of things. So just so you know, I will be in and out.
Great. Well, we're glad to have you here, and we will make accommodations as necessary. But good to see you, Representative Roach. Representative Lyman.
Good morning, Sheila Lyman, District 74, which is J, Livermore Falls, and part of Livermore. Thank you.
Good to see you. And Ms. Risler, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. I am Hillary Risler, and I am the Legislative Analyst for the Education and Cultural Affairs Committee.
Thank you. And Mr. Murphy.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Eli Murphy. I am the new committee clerk for the Education and Cultural Affairs Committee.
Great. And we would note the fact that Eli is new to the committee. We're very fortunate to have him. And with this Zoom platform and approach, the committee clerk plays a critical role in making sure that we're able to do the work that we have to do. And Eli, we're very pleased to have you with us. Thank you. So I will now turn, unless there are any questions, to Ms. Risler. And if you could summarize potentially the workload that's facing the committee for the next several months and any other comments that you'd like to make.
Sure. Thank you, everyone. It's great to see you again. Welcome back for the second regular session. I'm just going to briefly go over the memo that I sent. I sent an updated one just yesterday, so I am going to share my screen, but don't worry, I'm not going to read through the entire 7 pages. So first of all, as you know, we are in the second regular session, and the second regular session is generally much shorter than the first. Just so the committee knows, let's see here. We are starting out, we have a number of carryover bills from last session. As you recall, a lot of these bills, some of them had public hearings, some of them did not. The chairs and I are working on reaching out to a lot of the sponsors to find out the status. A lot of these bills are ones that stakeholders have been meeting over the interim. And so we'll let you know as we can when we can bring these back in front of you. I see Representative Stearns has his hand raised.
Yes, Hillary, I'm sorry to interrupt so early on, but I did notice that Representative Sampson is in the room, and if we could just take a second, maybe recognize her, I think that'd be great.
Well, thank you. Sorry, had some technicalities here to overcome. Good morning. I'm Heidi Sampson. I represent House District 21. That's Alfred, Limerick, Shapley, Newfield, and Parsonsfield. And Happy New Year, everyone.
I'm sorry, I was muted. But Representative Stearns, thank you for putting that out. And Representative Sampson, thank you for being here.
All right. So a couple quick things on the carryovers. I did send out to everyone a memo regarding LD 270. This is a bill on the regional adjustment. There is a pilot project going on about racial impact statement process. Talk more about that when we get into February, but you should have that memo, and if you have any questions about that, please don't hesitate to reach out. Although I will fully mention that I was not part of that process, and so I may have to get answers from elsewhere if necessary. The other carryover that I want to touch on is LD 1389. This is the bill regarding the Maine Ocean School. We are tentatively scheduling this for the week of January 17th. This is a bill where you may have questions or concerns that you want members of that school to address during that work session. If so, please just email me. We will send them out to you. We'll send them out to the Maine Ocean School, and hopefully they can address those questions when they come in that week. In addition to the carryover bills, we do have a number of new bills that were let in by Legislative Council this session. We tried to schedule a number of them actually for next week. The new bills will get the weekly out to you later today. There were a couple sponsors that had reached out that their bills weren't quite ready for public hearing. So we're just waiting for approval from the POs to postpone those public hearings. And as soon as we hear, we'll get that weekly out to you. But in general, because of the short time frame we have, we'll be trying to schedule these new bills for public hearings as quickly as we can. We do have some new bills that aren't printed yet. Hopefully we'll get those soon. I do want to mention, however, that these are not the only 3 new bills that we can expect. I think there will be more. I know there are a number of bills from last year that required major substantive rulemaking, so those are new bills that will probably be added to this list. So I'll try to keep you updated as much as I can on anything else that you can expect to be coming your way. This second regular session, we also have 2 Government Evaluation Act reports. We have reports from the Department of Education and the State Board of Education. We have scheduled those presentations for next Thursday. Hopefully, if you were able to stop by the Education Committee room and pick up the binder of that report, because they are a little bit large, we'll leave those in the Education Committee room if anyone else wants to stop by between now and then. But we are also getting electronic copies available. The State Board of Education report is already posted on the legislature website. Waiting to get the Department of Education's one up, and I'll get that link to you as soon as I have it. So you do have an electronic copy as well. We also have a review of quasi-independent state agencies. We don't get these until February 1st, so I'm not going to talk about them now, but in February, we'll have a meeting where we discuss those as well. As you recall, we also have a number of MEPRI reports coming in. This session, I'll be working with your chairs to figure out the best times to schedule those, especially as they may impact some of the bills that you have to work this session. And last, but certainly very not least, there are a number of reports that will be coming into the committee this session. Some of these come from resolves that were passed last year and are one-time reports. Some of them are annual reports that are in statute. What we're asking is that because there are so many, it's unlikely that we'd ever be able to schedule reports and presentations on every single bill or every single report. So for the committee, if you have a chance, take a look at the list. Let us know what your priorities are. Let us know what particular topics you're interested in, and I'll work with the chairs and with the department to see if we can get presentations scheduled on those reports. In addition, we'll be working with the department to maybe set aside some time where there aren't necessarily presentations, but that the department could come in and be available for questions on any reports. I want to briefly just remind you where you'll be able to find all these reports. If you go to the Education Committee's webpage and click on Committee Materials, and the third bullet point in the second section here on reports received by the committee, this is where we'll be posting all of the reports that we received. They're also the ones from last year, if you're curious. I'll email them as well, but so that you don't have to go find them in your email, because I know you do get inundated, we'll try to make sure they're all posted here. And I think that is all I have to mention. I will be working, as I said, with the department and with the chairs to get those reports to you, but please let me know what your priorities are so that we can make sure that those are priorities for the department and to get on the schedule.
So at this point, are there any questions from members of the committee of Ms. Risler? Okay, so just to follow up, Representative Stearns.
Yes, I was wondering if we could get a copy of the questions that are going out to the Ocean School.
Sure, yes, I did receive one email and I can get that to you.
Thanks.
And just to follow up with that, again, if people do have questions, if they can get them to Hillary as quickly as possible, that will be helpful in terms of our scheduling and allow them to make that work session as productive as possible, because they can respond to the concerns that people have that are on the committee. And secondly, just again, to reiterate what Hillary had mentioned, if you do have a chance to go through the 52 different reports that we have, if there's one in particular or two or three that you really would like to highlight, then we can schedule that. Otherwise, some of the reports are just perfunctory annual reports, and we're going to move through those fairly quickly. So we'll obviously stop if anybody on the committee has a question about a particular report, but we're also going to try to be as efficient as we possibly can. And I appreciate the summary that Ms. Risler just did. Obviously, there's going to be a lot more work that comes with that summary. And even though we were able to get through the summary in a half hour, it's going to take us quite a few days and work sessions to get through the agenda that we have. So again, if nobody from the committee has any questions at this point, we will move to the Department of Education. Any other questions? Okay. So I will either ask Ms. Risler, or if the department has already decided what order they want to go in and who they want to start with, that would be good to know.
Good morning, Senator Rafferty, Representative Brennan, and distinguished members of the Education and Cultural Affairs Committee. My name is Chelsea Fortin Trimble, and I'm the Director of Policy and Government Affairs for the Department of Education. We are looking forward to being with you this morning. We have a few updates from Commissioner Macon and Deputy Commissioner Tuda, followed by a round of introductions of the DOE's leadership. You'll notice there were a few new faces from last session. And then we will end our time with you today with two interim reports. We have LD 313, which focused on CTE and innovations, and LD 138, which took a look at literacy and the research and data available to our state. And so we are looking forward to kicking that off. I'm going to hand it to Commissioner Macon.
Thank you, Chelsea. And thanks, everybody. Happy New Year to you all. Chair Rafferty and Chair Brennan and distinguished members of the committee, it's great to see all of you. And it's a very exciting day to be kicking off this second session of the 130th. Thanks for your partnership throughout. I'm deeply grateful. You know, when I talk to other commissioners who work in other states, I don't think the rapport, the relationship, and the connection that we have here in Maine is replicated anywhere that I've heard about before. So just wanted to say, you know, I feel very lucky to be able to work with all of you. And I'm going to share the following. As you likely know, if you have been reading the news or, you know, out in public ever, anywhere, our education system here in Maine is weathering the prolonged COVID-19 pandemic. They're doing so with integrity, with solid resolve to support our students and families and communities in spite of unfathomable challenges that continue to be presented by this ongoing pandemic. We've been providing academic, social, emotional, and nutritional needs. And also, I think our schools, our public schools, are that touchstone for people who, at large, community members, parents, families, it's that rock of solid, you know, community heartbeat is continuing to go on every day. The lights are going on, the flags are being hoisted up in the mornings, in spite of the ice and snow, and the business of schools is ongoing. I do encourage you to check out, DOE has our Facebook account. We also now are on Instagram and Twitter, and there are so many inspiring stories that I encourage you when you feel that things are seeming especially bleak, or you just need a little dose of inspiration. I encourage you to check that out, because every minute in our schools, there are miracles continuing to happen in spite of all of this. The Department of Education team continues to hold office hours, and these are live office hours. That's another thing. It's unusual for a department to do on such a regular basis. That isn't happening in other places. Daily, sometimes office hours with practitioners in the field, and providing technical assistance and training and discussion topics, including, of course, COVID-19 and school health. Social emotional learning and mental health support. And in fact, just so far this school year, our team has provided 8,200 hours of contact hours for school staff members and administrators in mental health, trauma-informed practices, and behavioral health issues alone. Just that's astounding. We also, as you know, have the SEL for Me, which is the free open access K through 12 curriculum for social emotional learning. I think we've had over 72,000 engagements now, with nearly 400 parents also having registered as users on that. And we are putting out specific materials to support educator resilience and adult social emotional health. And we have an initiative called Supporting Our Staff, or SOS modules, that you can find on our website as well. They're good for school staff, but also for other people who are trying to weather this storm that just continues. Other teams are offering live office hours on content, instruction, technology use to enhance learning experiences in the classroom, emergency operations planning, special education service provision. And for example, 400 teachers were recently trained in reading instruction for students with dyslexia and other struggling readers, materials and free kits. This training was provided for free. It's usually something that school by school would invest in at a fairly high cost. They were offered this free training and the resources and materials throughout the state. 113 districts participated and 217 schools were part of this training. There are 15 new CDS pre-K classrooms that have been established across 4 regions by our department in the past calendar year. And those are using federal funds to get started up. Partnering, also the special ed team is partnering with KVCAP on an AmeriCorps project to address staffing issues in CDS programs. And they've started to work with SAUs to offer all costs covered for setting up CDS classrooms inside of school districts. We're supporting English learners within the classrooms, and we're meeting, in fact, in I guess it'll be next week, with a group of districts who have high numbers of asylum seekers to examine ways in which we can better support them in providing for these students who need so much special attention. We're supporting schools in managing federal funds to maximize those benefits. As you likely know, it's been wonderful to have so many different grant programs filtering down through from the federal government, but it is quite a tangle for a school business office person who has to find a way to identify, where the starting and ending dates are on these things and what can be covered by which of the grant programs, and they all have different reporting requirements. And so we've been providing significant support for schools with respect to that. We also have a strong partnership with the Maine Parent Federation. My technology is blowing up. The Maine Parent Federation is working with our special education team, and the team has collected input through surveys together. They actually worked with Maine Parent Federation to develop the survey and to put it out there, and have collaborated on a video project. There are a series of 8 videos that you can find online on our special services page that highlight 8 indicators and the data that we're collecting for the federal government. The parents are then asked to view those videos and to weigh in on, are these goals and indicators on target? And is there something that they think we might be missing, or something that they think we should be examining differently? And those indicators are adjusted in response to that parent feedback. We've also been partnering with Maine Parent Federation to provide trainings for parents, just in terms of managing students' learning needs and those special learning needs throughout the pandemic. It's created so many challenges, particularly for certain student demographics and their families. In great news, Maine Teacher of the Year nominations are now open. We want to thank this year's County Teachers of the Year for their ongoing advocacy and spokesmanship. We ask all Maine people, and especially you all, might be this, if you have a connection to a school and you know of an exemplary teacher, we hope you'll nominate that teacher. The slogan we're using is Maine's Teacher of the Year journey starts with your nomination. It's never been more important for us to celebrate and acknowledge and support the work of our courageous educators, and we're excited to see this kicking off again. Educators and staff have, of course, been struggling with students' social, emotional, behavioral, and academic needs in light of the ongoing disruptions that have been created by the pandemic situation. We have been working DOE's team has been working with Channel 8 News to provide a series on the impact of COVID on child mental health and how parents and communities can support their students. We've been providing, I've already said we provided over, like, I think it's close to 8,200 contact hours of mental health specific training for teachers. And when I mentioned earlier that SEL for Me, the online SEL program, has been accessed by so far 400 parents. And it's interesting because it wasn't designed for parents, but little by little, I think it's catching on. The highest numbers range between 9th through 12th grade, if that's of interest. These are parents who are looking for support with the social emotional learning of their teenage youngsters. Our website data, I think tells the story that people are here in Maine, people who are in the field are turning to the Department of Education for support, for timely information, and for resources. We have hit a record of well over 3 million visits to our webpage this year. And recently, the most visited page is our certification page. And speaking of certification, in 2021, the team has processed more than 21,500 initial certifications and 10,500 renewal certifications and records checks, hard to say, for administrators and education specialists and education technicians and teachers. And we are maintaining a remarkable turnaround that's far above the industry standard. We're not operating today at our fastest turnaround time. However, it is still remarkable that they have, been anywhere between 3 and 5 weeks for a start to finish turnaround. And in my years of education, it has never been close to that. So I'm really proud of the work of that team. They've also created appointment hours for educators who need additional assistance or would-be educators to schedule a time in advance to connect with one of the specialists to kind of help get walked through the process and to troubleshoot any particular areas, because things can be so individualized sometimes, and to make that fit with a kind of a universal system, we are trying to provide more personalized support and service for this of trying to build our education workforce that continues to be, in dire shortage areas across every possible area, including education, all the way to bus drivers. So CDS services have been, I think I maybe already said that there are 15 preschool classrooms that have been established, serving more than 200 children. They are currently developing 20 new preschool programs to support existing unmet needs and organizing professional opportunities for CDS staff to increase their special education, to increase the number of special education teachers in Maine. Let's see here. Sorry, I'm looking at my notes, and they have been increased. So I guess I'm gonna end here with just a little note that Bosch will be meeting on January 18th to consider the OSHA rule on required vaccination, and they'll be considering the OSHA rule and emergency temporary standards at that meeting on the 18th. Our team at DOE has been working daily with CDC, Maine CDC's team, and the epidemiologist team who creates and curates and revises the standard operating procedures, the SOP it's called, for responding to positive cases. We have worked on a system collaboratively that will allow the voices of school nurses and superintendents to be reflected in terms of their operational and logistical expertise and how that works with the epidemiology and science of researchers and doctors. And Dan is going to share with you some details on that, the newly revised and our plans for future revision and partnership related to the SOP, but I see hands up. So perhaps I should pause and then we'll turn it over to Dan.
So Commissioner Macon, before we get to questions, I just want to thank you for being here and for bringing your staff, and hopefully we'll have an opportunity to meet everybody as the day unfolds. I also want to thank you. Obviously, we had monthly meetings from last July until the end of last year, and thank you for attending and for your staff and the responsiveness to the issues that we raised. And we certainly look forward to working with you during this next legislative session. And obviously, there are a number of key issues that we need to address. But Happy New Year, and thank you for being here. And I see that Representative Sampson and Representative Salisbury have questions, and we'll start with Representative Sampson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Commissioner. Appreciate you being here. I have a question and sort of a question with comments as a follow-up, and kind of also tagging on to the last comments you were just talking about. I mean, clearly I requested safety studies last year, it was last year, December 1st, when we had our last meeting. And I was pretty persistent in requesting those. And in the end, there were no safety studies. And what the CDC sent us, they were not safety studies. And then a couple of days after our meeting, the FDA approval board went forward and approved the 5 to 11-year-old shots. But they were operating on no informed consent. And actually, one of the doctors just prior to the vote, and I sent you this information, said, we'll have to just start giving these shots and we'll see then how safe they are. That's just the way it's going to go. So these folks are knowingly experimenting on our children, our babies, without voluntary consent. So allow me, just so that we all are on the same page, to share the international law. The first principle of international law on voluntary consent of the human subject is absolutely essential. This means that the person involved should have legal capacity to give consent, should be so situated as to be able to exercise free power of choice without the intervention of any element of force, fraud, deceit, duress, overreaching, or other ulterior forms of constraint or coercion, and should be sufficient. They should have sufficient knowledge and comprehension of the elements of the subject matter involved as to enable him to make an understanding and enlightened decision. So I say that because a month later, we, according to the Vaccine Adverse Events Recording System, which is known to give 1% of the people actually recording are on that have had adverse events record on this site. And as of the end of December, there were 131 deaths of 5 to 17-year-olds in the state of Maine. Now let's just compare that with the fact that there were only 2 deaths in the entire country during the entire pandemic. And my question is, if we've had 131 deaths of these children, where are the autopsies? And I would like forensic autopsies, because we should know. Because
if I can interrupt, Chair Brennan, I don't think this is an appropriate line of questioning for Commissioner Macon.
Actually, it is very appropriate.
I think that it would be more appropriate for perhaps Dr. Shah or someone.
No, this is appropriate because this is a question that I presented to the commissioner, and she said she had safety studies. And I want to follow up, and we as a committee need to be fully informed here. My question is, are the risks to benefit understood?
Representative Sampson, just for 1 second, Representative Salisbury. Representative Sampson has asked this question before. I respect her right to ask that question. I would just ask Representative Sampson to be more direct in asking the question. And there are a lot of editorial comments that are being added as well. But if you're simply asking the commissioner for follow-up information to a question you've asked, that's fine.
Well, I'm not giving any editorials. These are all documented bits of information. And I have to set the stage, with all due respect, sir, to be able to ask the question that I want to ask.
And please proceed with that question.
Thank you. So also, as precedents here, we have all sworn an oath to protect, to defend the Constitution. That means our committee is responsible to look after the welfare of our citizens. And I have a genuine concern for our children, as I believe everyone here has. And I have a genuine concern for our colleagues, because history has shown us some very concerning things that I want to bring to your attention, and it is very relevant. That conducting officials who conduct experiments, because this is their job, they are still held accountable when the truth comes out. So for example, history, this is proven, you can research it yourself, that people were prosecuted for testing drugs for immunization for against malaria, epidemic jaundice, typhus, smallpox, and cholera. What was their crime? Doing these because it was their job and it was unconsensual experimentation. So history teaches us that government officials who thought they were immune.
Again,
doing their
Representative
jobs-
Sampson, if you could ask a direct question of
I'm
the
going to
commissioner,
get to it
I would
right now.
appreciate that.
I'm getting,
And-
yes, sir.
Well,
I'm getting to it.
there's been a lot in between. And at this point in the process, we are responding to and asking questions of the presentation that the commissioner just provided.
But she just talked about the whole OSHA thing, and this is all interconnected. And because the Department of Education is responsible for pushing forward these initiatives, and we don't have every opportunity to talk to the commissioner like this in a public setting, and I think this needs to be brought to light. And I'm going to ask a question. I need to set the tone so people understand and they don't just start asking all these other questions that I can explain right now. So I'm almost done, and I appreciate your patience. The fact is that these government officials historically had no immunity. Why? Because they were violating human rights. These are human rights crimes. If you're experimenting on individuals that cannot have informed consent. So I don't want us, I'm asking you please to listen and consider. I don't want us to fail the state. 131 children have died, somehow correlated to this shot. Where are the investigations? So Commissioner, I would like to ask for investigations. There should be autopsies, and I would like to have those results. And, it's no secret that during this whole crisis, I've been an advocate for medical freedom and personal liberties. I've been a part of the lawsuit. I've spoken out. And I have been concerned about the tramplings of the civil liberties of individuals. I've studied a voluminous documents and evidence. And we have to protect the public. That is our place. And when the truth is exposed, willful blindness will not protect anyone from accountability for the actions that have been taken. I am asking for forensic autopsies on these children. And I will not aid and abet what I believe are actually human rights crimes. And this needs to be addressed. And I just thank you for your attention.
Thank you. So Commissioner Macon, you understand the question that was asked, and certainly you can respond to it at appropriate at some point. It doesn't necessarily have to be at this point. And I will now go to Representative Salisbury, who also had a question.
Sorry, I just needed to take a breath. That's a hard act to follow. Thank you, Commissioner Macon, for being here. My question is related to, sorry, it was back a ways, but in something that we've talked about recently, which is around free and reduced lunch. And I know that lots of school districts have faced issues where parents aren't filling out the forms, which is potentially going to impact funding later going down the road. And I just wanted to put it out there that maybe if we could talk about what strategies there are for school districts. I speak as a school committee chair, and I'm being a member of this committee, a vaccinated and boosted member of this committee, and wanted to, see if we could maybe talk a little bit more about that so we can, strategize some of that.
Well, thank you for bringing that very important topic up, because we have heard that all along. We heard it as a prediction when we knew that there would be, thank goodness, free lunch provided for all students who choose to make use of that. Now we're in our second year of that provision of fully free nutrition services for all students. And it does, in fact, remove the incentive for anybody to fill out a government form about their income and personal family information. It's been a significant disincentive, I think, for people who would ultimately qualify, but now everyone qualifies, there's not that necessity to fill out the form. And so you're absolutely right. We, as a result, are seeing in statewide data that there's a drop in the number of reported socioeconomically disadvantaged students. That is a statewide, and it's also a nationwide phenomenon. Everybody is dealing with the same thing, and we are working on different ways that we might in the future, because ideally we don't want students ever to have to pay again for the nutritional services provided at school. And if that's the case, our nation, and certainly here in Maine, we all need to look at what might be another way for us to identify that population of students so that we can be certain that we get our share of federal funding, which is also contingent on those numbers. It also, as you can imagine, impacts EDs 279s and the school subsidy that's enhanced for per the number and percentage of disadvantaged students, and also for identifying demographic groups who may be underserved or need additional support. So for a variety of reasons, we need to examine different opportunities for identifying socioeconomic disadvantage. And I know that our team, you might hear about this later, and we will maybe pull together some ideas and present those to you at a later date. I don't have all the information now, but I know that our federal grant programs team has been struggling, for example, to come up with innovative ways to show socioeconomic disadvantaged in the private schools. The EANS funding, it's specifically targeted to be disseminated to our private schools. It's one of the federal funding streams. This round, EANS 2, must be provided specifically to those schools based on prioritized in the amount and allocation based on socioeconomic disadvantage. And so far we are far short. I think the highest that we haven't come very far in terms of those who have applied and would like to be part of the funding can't come anywhere close to the 40% disadvantaged benchmark that the federal government has thus far been holding Maine and a few other states where the private schools disproportionately serve non-disadvantaged students. So because of their work, we do have a few glimpses into what might be used. And there's census data, there's geographic data, there's potentially the tax base of a region that doesn't help us with individual student by student identification, but that would at least give a glimpse into the relative level of disadvantage in a community or a school. So we're exploring a lot of things, and we're finding some innovative ways. As I mentioned, we're being pushed to do that on account of this specific federal grant program already. So more to come on that, and problem acknowledged.
To add to that, Commissioner Macon, I just wanted to share with the committee, you do have a report that will be coming your way that includes a cross-section of leaders from across the department that have been working to address this concern for the past several months. And so the report will lay out for you each program and how it impacts them. So everything from school funding to ESEA Title I, and then some recommendations to consider and more information about a pilot that the department's data team is currently engaging in. So I think that's something I suspect Representative Brennan will connect with you to get that on the calendar so that we can give you a presentation about that and dig more deeply into that report. I do, in the obviously acknowledging time, want to be sure that we give Deputy Commissioner Tuda an opportunity to give some updates around the SOP. And so I see one hand, Representative Stearns, but I do want to make sure we transition to Deputy Commissioner Tuda after that question.
Yeah. Well, before we get to, if we could allow Representative Stearns to ask his question, that might be most appropriate at this time. So Representative Stearns.
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Commissioner, for being here today. Hillary has put together for us really a comprehensive list of reports. And I don't have any leadership authority on this committee, but I'm wondering if it might not be a good idea for you or your top staff to work with the leadership on the committee to perhaps identify some of those reports. Representative Brennan referred to them as perfunctory, being kind, and some of those perhaps could be every other year reports, or some of them may have passed the date of which they are really, if they're not helping and informing us in moving forward, I hate to see resources and staff spend their time on those reports. So I throw that out as a suggestion moving forward, and you take it if you like it.
I like it. I like it very much. Thank you for that.
And Representative Stearns, you greatly underestimate your influence on the committee. So, and I do believe we will be getting that report back on data and using other metrics to look at school lunch issues. And Commissioner, where do we stand? At one point, there was also legislation, I believe it was Representative Millet's, about having a uniform application on the DOE web page. Is that moving forward?
You know what? I am not sure I can answer. Maybe Deputy Commissioner Tuda. I have not been in charge of that particular project.
Okay.
So I can't speak to its status, but somebody on the team probably can. And you're going to be meeting our commissioners, our directors shortly, perhaps.
Okay.
We do have available 2 school units, an online system. I know that came a bit ago to make available the ease of having that available. But as far as a universal application, I'm not sure. We'd have to follow up with you on that.
Okay.
So good morning, Representative Brennan and committee members. Wishing you all a happy, healthy 2022. And I did want to just take a little bit of time just to help provide some background information and clarification for you. Before I get into the SOP, which has become common vocabulary, along with many other words that we never used to use before, but SOP is a new one. I just wanted to remind you that there are really 2 documents that schools utilize during the pandemic, one being the US CDC's guidance, really preventative measures for keeping students and staff safe in schools, and the US CDC continues to update that document. The second is what's known as the Standard Operating Procedure for Responding to Positive Cases, commonly known as the SOP, and that is authored by our colleagues at the Maine CDC and has been updated continuously throughout the pandemic as research and information from the US CDC continues to evolve. So most recently on December 30th, so last week, the Maine CDC did issue an updated version of the SOP. It was being continuously informed actually during the school break by updates from the US CDC. So just when they thought they had a new version for us, US CDC would update something. So actually the timing was good because it was able to be packaged all together before it went out to schools. So some of the highlights in that latest version that maybe you've heard about or maybe wondering about really begin to address kind of the spike that we're seeing with Omicron, but also I would say the secondary priority that the Maine CDC had was to make provisions for keeping as many school students as possible in schools, because they also recognize the benefit of in-person learning. And so it can be a balancing act, but they have found a way to provide for that through this version of the SOP. So the first thing that they changed was the definition of outbreak. Many of you have probably heard schools in your areas with an identification of outbreak. The old definition I once spent a lot of time on because it's changed, but it had to do with 3 people from different households essentially in the same school would become an identification of outbreak that would often lead to any additional support that the school needed from the Maine CDC. And we continue to post weekly an update for the public on what schools were identified as outbreaks. The Maine CDC changed that definition to become actually more in line with and following a similar process that we have used all along for many years in determining outbreaks, whether that was flu or other respiratory illnesses this time of year, actually. And essentially the threshold is that if you have 15% or more of your school population, so that's both students and staff, are absent, not because they're on a vacation or because they're on a trip, but because they're sick, that gets reported by the school to the Department of Education, and we relay that to the CDC. The CDC will then initiate an investigation to see what's going on. So enough people are sick, let's see what's going on. So that has changed. That's just new as of Monday as far as what the procedure is for identifying an outbreak in schools. And we will continue to post publicly the number of cases that are reported to us and the number of outbreaks as they're identified by the Maine CDC on a weekly basis. So that's the first change. The second change has to do with some of the areas in which schools were identifying close contacts. And again, based on new and recent information, they were finding that in 2 settings, it may not have been as necessary to identify close contacts. Those were an outside setting, so when kids are out on the playground or running around at recess, which is always a good thing. Because of the information that the Maine CDC has about outside transmission, they were comfortable with removing that, so schools no longer have to determine who was a close contact when the kids are outside. And the second piece is, again, because of ongoing research showing transmission on school buses, and because the federal requirement still is in place for everyone on a school bus, specifically in this case, to be masked, the Maine CDC was comfortable with removing the close contact identification on buses. So those are 2 updates for schools. And finally, in alignment with and with further discussion at the Maine CDC and the US CDC, there were some changes on quarantine. And this is probably the highlight for keeping as many students as possible when healthy in schools was some of the changes to the quarantine exceptions. There were previously exceptions in previous versions, vaccination, when someone has been participating in pool testing at the school, which you've heard us discuss before. Those were already in place. Some of the vaccination components now include boostering, but the other piece was a strengthening of the importance of masking. And so if a school has a universal masking policy in place, the students are able to shorten the quarantine and return to school as long as there is a masking policy in place and they are not showing symptoms. Students can be in school, which is good news for them. So those are some of the highlights. The other piece that I did want to mention is that Dr. Shaw has been hosting 2 meetings so far, and we actually have a third this afternoon with superintendent representatives to get their operational feedback on the SOP. So they are continuing to study, the Maine CDC continues to study research and trends and Omicron and other variants as we develop through this. And the superintendents have appreciated an audience with Dr. Shaw to be able to provide some feedback on just how the SOP plays out. And so I think it's been informative for both parties to understand how that works. So for future iterations, there has been some input from school staff on not the science or the requirements or the research that goes into it, but really how it plays out in schools. So that can be informative for Dr. Shaw and his team. So we look forward to that going forward. And with that, that concludes my update on at least today's version of the SOP.
Thank you. And Mr. Chishuda, I'm assuming or hoping these changes and these updates are available to the public and members of the committee on the DOE website?
Yep, certainly is. And previous versions as well. So on our COVID toolkit, right on the right-hand side, there's a link to the SOP, standard operating procedure, and the current version is always at the top, and previous versions, if someone would like to see previous versions, are there as well. So right on our website.
Thank you very much. I have Representative McCray and then Representative Dodge, and we'll start with Representative McCray.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Welcome, Mr. Tudor. Good to see you again. I have a brief question. So you mentioned something about where schools have mask mandates in place. I know of a few districts, simply because I've asked, where even though they have a mandate in place, the compliance is at best poor. And certainly, people have masks on and they're below their chin or certainly under their nose. Is there anything that has addressed that from the DOE's perspective, or does that just come back on the local districts?
So enforcement does, Representative, come to the locals. We did, by the way, send out yesterday, as a matter of fact, some information, updated information about masking and proper masking. And you've probably heard that the type of mask may be more important than ever and those types of things. So we've tried to provide resources and information to help schools pass along that resource and details to schools, but enforcement does come down to the local level at that point. Again, the idea is to have as many people as possible and to help prevent that disease transmission, obviously, is the goal. So
thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Representative Dodge.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chuda, for being here. And thank you to all of our Department of Education folks who are with us this morning. My question is about the communication between school nurses and the CDC, please. I am hoping that all wrinkles have been ironed out to maximize the time that our school nurses can spend with students and local issues, as opposed to answering CDC questions about data that they are requesting from schools. Can you give us a few moments about how that is working now, please? Thank you.
Sure. Wrinkles, wrinkles are many, but we bring our pocket irons as much as we possibly can to help iron out those wrinkles. So I would say that, through the pandemic, we've learned that the pace at which information changes is quite rapid, right? And so we're all trying to do our very best. And we know that our school staff, maybe to a fault sometimes, often just try to follow rules. They're rule followers, which is awesome. And that helps to keep people safe and informed and confident. And so there has been a great deal of dialogue. We'll continue to give kudos to Emily Poland, our school nurse consultant, who provides office hours. Just recently did again to address any questions and concerns that were on the latest version of the SOP. We've also made it an expectation that the superintendents that are with audience with Dr. Shaw are getting information from their school staff. Many of them mentioned just at our last meeting that they had pulled together meetings with their nurses to get that feedback in order to be able to relay to Dr. Shaw on that information. And I think with these efforts that we're trying to, again, keep a balance between keeping people safe, but also address capacity for the work that is at hand. I think we're making progress in that direction to enable nurses to continue to do what was already a difficult and challenging job, and then we added COVID to it. So think we're making some progress there. We'll continue to make sure that their feedback is brought to the attention of policymakers when it comes to this in particular.
Thank you. Any other questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, Ms. Fortin Trimble, I'm looking, it's 10:35 now. We still have the two reports that are scheduled. What is your kind of agenda or time frame at this point?
I'd still like to have you be reacquainted with each of our office directors. I think it's important that you meet some of the new folks.
Okay.
So I will like to launch into that. Each individual is just going to share their name, their role, and if you have any questions, we can take those at a later time. And then from there, we'll have Dwight Littlefield, our CTE director, provide his report on the interim of LD 313. So without further ado, I want to introduce you to JC Holmes and Mark Hervit, both members of my team. They'll be working very closely with you this session. So JC, would you like to go first?
I'm JC Holmes, the Federal State Legislative Liaison. I work with our congressional delegation and certainly with you. I also coordinate all the rulemaking, and I will be bringing, I believe, 6 major substantive rules to the committee during this session.
Okay, I'm Mark Hervit, and I just started with the department at the end of November. I recently retired as a superintendent in Maine, and I've been in Maine education for 41 years. My last role was Union 93, which is on the Blue Hill Peninsula. There are 5 towns there, and I was there for 14 and a half years. So I'm looking forward to working with you all, and my role is called Legislative and Constituent Specialist. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Kelly?
Good morning, everybody. I am Kelly DeVoe. I am the Director of Communications at the Department of Education. Welcome back.
Mary?
Hi, I'm having trouble getting my video. There it is. Good morning, everybody. Welcome back. Good morning, everybody. Welcome back. Happy New Year. I am Director of Special Projects and delighted to be introduced. Take care.
Thank you. Joanne? Joanne, I think you may be muted still, so I'll come back. Oh, go ahead.
Technical difficulties. Good morning. I'm Joanne Allen. I'm the Director of School Finance, Data, and Child Nutrition for the department.
Thank you. Nicole?
Good morning. I'm Nicole Dennis, and I'm the Director of Finance for the department. And my team provides fiscal management and support, as well as development and submission of the departmental budget.
Scott?
Yes, good morning. I'm Scott Brown, and I'm the Director of the department's Office of School Construction and Transportation.
Jeanette?
Thank you.
Good morning, Jeanette Keck, Chief of Learning Systems. That team comprises of assessment, ESEA federal programs, career and technical education, and curriculum and instruction.
Angel?
Good morning. My name is Angel Martinez Laredo, and I go by the pronouns he, him, his, and in Spanish, él. And I'm the Director of Higher Education Educator Support Services. And so our team is a very exciting team that I enjoy working with, and it includes certification, higher education, adult ed, and teacher excellence. And so the bulk of what we do, we try to provide a seamless transition for students who are either interested in pursuing a degree in teaching who are traditional age, or as an adult learner transitioning into that profession. At the same time, we work with many candidates who have the desire to transition from their current career and who want to pursue a teaching profession through our certification pathway 2. And the commission talked about our numbers, and what we tried to do is to increase the number of teachers in the classrooms and move forward. Good to be with you.
Thank you. Paige?
Good morning. My name is Paige Nichols, and I'm the Chief Innovation Officer in our Office of Innovation. Our team is committed to supporting innovative educational practices across the state, and we look forward to sharing more with you about our work in the future. Thank you.
Martin?
Trying. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Martin Mackey, and I am the director of the Rethinking Responsive Education Ventures, which is a $17 million grant designed to celebrate, elevate, and promote innovative practices throughout the state of Maine. Thank you.
Thanks. Jonathan.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jonathan Shapiro. I'm the director of the Maine School Safety Center, and our primary mission is providing training, technical support, and guidance to our schools for all things school safety. It's great to be here. I look forward to working with you.
Thank you. Shelley.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Shelley Shassi-Jandro. I am the director of the Office of Federal Emergency Relief Programs. My team supports the work in regards to our school districts, engaging in with the federal emergency packages and supporting the learning and evidence-based interventions.
Julie.
Good morning, everyone. I am a proud new member of this team. I am the director of the Office of School and Student Supports. You are most familiar with Bear Shea and Emily Poland from my team, and I look forward to working with all of you.
Thank you. Margaret.
Hi, everyone. Unfortunately, I can't share my video. I'm not sure why. I think there's something blocking that. So my name is Margaret Brownlee. I use she, her pronouns. I'm going to start my video now. There we go. I'm the Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion for the Department of Education. I'm brand new. I'm very excited to be here today. I'm responsible for leading and directing cross-team initiatives within the department, professional development, research, and resources, both internally and externally to the field. Thank you, and Happy New Year, everyone.
Erin.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Erin Frazier. I'm the Director of Special Services Birth to 22. So I oversee special education, delivery of services, oversight of special education programming, and federal reporting.
Thank you. Mary Alice.
Good morning, I'm Mary Alice Crofton. I'm the Executive Director for the Maine Commission for Community Service, which now is known as Volunteer Maine. And we have 2 buckets of work that we accomplish under our commissioners. And one of them is, at this point, restoring the strength of the volunteer sector in Maine, which has been hard hit by COVID and lost almost 40% of its leadership. And then the second bucket of work has to do with the National Service Program, specifically AmeriCorps granting in the state of Maine. And it's nice to see you all.
Thank you. Beth?
Good morning. My name is Beth Lambert. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Director of Innovative Teaching and Learning in the Office of Innovation. My team's focused on supporting educators in the ever-evolving landscape of educational pedagogy, particularly in regards to how technology can be used to deepen and transform education. And now I believe I'm going to turn it over to Dwight Littlefield, who's the State Director of Career and Technical Education.
Great, thanks, Beth. Appreciate it. Welcome all. Good to be back. Happy New Year. And with that, going to get started. It's a privilege to be here. Senator Rafferty, Representative Brennan, and members of the Education and Cultural Affairs Committee. Certainly thank you for inviting us and an opportunity to give a quick little update on LD 313, which is a resolve to advance career and technical education opportunities in Maine. Just one moment.
And Mr. Littlefield, just
Yes.
before you get started, if I could just go back to Mrs. Fortin Trimble. Obviously, thank you for all the introductions, and there are a lot of people within the department. If people do have questions, members of the committee, is it best to try to contact you first and then potentially somebody else within the department that has substantive knowledge of something, as opposed to trying to track down somebody directly?
Yes, thank you for that question. Always feel free to reach out to me, JC, or Mark, and we'll make sure we get you a response quickly. And we'll connect with folks that we've introduced across this screen and many others that are leading across our department as we get into this session. We also will start the question and response documents as we have in the past, starting with today. If there are questions that were not answered, we'll follow up with you later this week.
Okay, and I'll just ask the clerk to make sure that everybody on the committee has your cell phone number as well as email.
Great, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. So Mr. Littlefield, sorry to interrupt, but we're looking forward to your presentation on LD 313.
Great, not a problem at all. I'm going to share my screen. So again, this is just a quick update. This is the interim report for the work group. What I really wanted to focus on today was to really share with you the accomplishments, and it's been a very productive few meetings that we've had. Just to kind of walk you through that, I know you just received the report, and we can, if you have some questions specific to that, we can certainly do that as well. How I structured the report is I went through as part of the bill with all of the bullet points and pieces that we were asked, and it really gave kind of a summary of where we were at with those pieces. So again, accomplishments right off the top is we were able to go in and pull those unique programs that were being asked. What was really interesting with the work group is they asked us to take even a little bit deeper dive, and that's why you'll see multiple charts in the report to go back to even 2016 and kind of take an assessment of what programs we were offered then versus what we're being offered now, and look at enrollment numbers. So it was really a great exercise for us, and even a little bit more than even what the bill asked for. What was really interesting is, we have over 80 unique CTE programs that we currently offer across the state. But from 2016 to 2022, we really saw about a 13% growth in enrollment in CTE, which was really exciting to see. And with that, you can see that our enrollment this year for the first time is over 9,000. So we're a little bit over 9,100 students that are enrolled in our CTE schools. So really excited about that. We took a dive into chapter 115 in the current version that's being moving forward. The bill asked us to make sure we were giving credit for those professions, such as if an electrician wanted to move into CTE, that we were recognizing that work. And that continues to be a part of the certification process, but we did look through that and show that we can recognize the work that they're doing and the pathways that are being offered through the certification. So it is a big part of that process if someone transitions from a profession or from a skill into a teaching position, we do take a look at that. The other piece that we looked at was there's 2 positions that are funded through the EPS formula when that new formula was introduced a few years ago. We have student service coordinators and career counselors at some of our locations. And there really isn't an endorsement, a specific endorsement that sits in chapter 115 with that. So we pulled together a group of CTE instructors or CTE directors and began to kind of write out an endorsement on that. That group's met a couple of times. We're still working out those pieces to see what that looked like. But we tried we know that's something that we will have to work through the process to introduce, but it's been a great little exercise to bring a group of directors together to work on something like that. So again, another great piece of this legislation that brought some folks together to get some work done. Where we really kind of wrapped up our work was one of the pieces was to look at some of those existing barriers and the challenges to access CTE for students across the state. And so we had a great brainstorming session, and in your report, you have a list of what some of those barriers were recognized. What you don't have and what you'll get in the next, the update of the report, because just prior to the holidays, is we began having really great conversations about solutions. You know, I think we spend a lot of time on thinking of the challenges that we face, but we really felt it was important to devote the time with the work group to begin to talk about some solutions. And so we've begun to put that list together, and that's something you'll certainly see in the final report. I can tell you that a lot of the discussions are leading to things that will continue, you know, so it's not going to, I think one thing that we've learned through this work is that there's going to be continuing work even beyond the March final report that we do. I see several groups that are going to continue to be working on different parts of it. So, and that this is going to be certainly one of those. So we're excited about that. We talked about middle school. One of the pieces of the bill was to look at funding middle school moving forward. And the group really is excited about the opportunities and the experiences that we've been able to provide for middle school students through the pilot program that the legislature passed a few years ago. It has come with its challenges with COVID and the pandemic and so forth. But we've continued to work through those. And one thing that really came out of that was pulling together some directors again that have run middle school programs and begin to engage on how do we sustain this and keep it moving forward. But the work group really appreciated the work that's been done and look forward to continuing that and providing those experiences for middle school students moving forward. So again, a great conversation with this group. Some of their next steps and the pieces that are coming up, and I think these are some of the big pieces that are really going to take some time to get through. The MEPRI report that continues to being finalized. Once that's finalized, they're going to come and present to the work group and give them the feedback and some of the pieces that they found and how it could impact some of the asks and the bullet points that fall underneath that. So we look forward to that discussion. Then there's some the last few pieces of the bill is around pathways, connecting with college and career, and making those connections, as well as even connecting with STEM. And we anticipate that work, this spring, and to show how the role that CTE plays in those STEM careers and STEM opportunities, and looking at that and taking a deep dive into that work. So we look forward to that. And again, a little bit more work around pathways. We have a superintendent that's on the committee that's really has done a lot of work around this. And so we look forward to researching it and finding out how we can work and provide those multiple pathways for students where they can move in and out and seamlessly. But again, I think that is another piece of this legislation that's going to take some time, much beyond our March final report. We look forward to the conversation with industrial arts. That was another big piece of this, and making that connection. And we've already seen some examples of that's happening this school year. So we look forward to taking even a deeper dive in that and addressing some of those concerns and questions so that these industrial arts programs can continue moving forward, and really making that true alignment with career and technical education. The other big piece was looking at technical math and technical English and connecting those pieces and offering those. And again, we're seeing examples in our CTEs, so we have opportunities to learn from what's being offered already, and being able to make those connections. And then the final piece, and one of the big pieces, is the internship and apprenticeships. And we know certainly with the Maine Jobs Recovery plan that the governor has put out, there's lots of discussions around internships and apprenticeships. And again, we've seen an increase with our directors in making those connections, as well as extended learning opportunities. So we look forward this spring to engaging in those at even a deeper level and in making those relationships even more formalized. So that's kind of the highlights. Just wanted to provide with folks. I know you just got the report to be able to take a look at, but certainly if you have any questions, happy to answer those.
Thank you, Mr. Littlefield. That was very helpful. And you mentioned that there's a second part to this report that you're looking to present to us in March.
That's correct. Yep,
Okay.
there was an interim that was due now,
Okay.
and then there's a final report that we'll be presenting in March.
Okay, thank you. Senator Woodson, I know in particular you have an interest in this issue, and I wanted to give you an opportunity to ask any questions if you had any at this point.
No, I don't. I am very impressed and compliment the group on the comprehensiveness of what they're doing and looking forward to the final report. Thank you.
Great. Ms. Holmes?
I have been participating in all of the work groups, and I just want to say that there is a very, very interactive group of members who really want to problem solve, and they have really begun to look at what are the effective practices in different parts of the state and what are the opportunities for replication of those effective practices to really address all of the bullets that you saw in the PowerPoint.
Right. Thank you. And just two other quick questions. Ms. Risler, does this report back also include the opportunity to report out legislation if necessary?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So when we get the report in March, there may be recommendations for legislative initiatives. You're muted.
I was gonna say, let me just check one other thing really quick. Yes, so the committee is authorized to submit legislation based on either this interim report, if you wanted to, or that final report in March.
Okay, so I'm assuming, Mr. Littlefield, at this point, you don't have any legislative recommendations that you're making and asking us to act on more immediately.
No, we
Okay.
don't at this point. No.
Okay, and then that would be the possibility in March that you may be making those recommendations.
Yes.
Okay, and then if I could ask, Senator Daughtry, does this work or this discussion have any impact on the bill that you have that we carried over?
It does. I think they're totally linked in a way, especially the conversations about middle school availability. But I do see the bill separately because of the stakeholders that we have locally who are working on it, and I'm expecting to get their report back that they have been doing about what they'd like to see moving forward with the bill as well. So hopefully we'll have that in hand soon.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, seeing no other questions at this point, we will now move on to the next report that has to do with reading proficiency.
Representative Brennan, that report will be presented by Leanne Larson, our early childhood team leader. She is transitioning from another meeting. So if we could take a 5-minute break, she'll be up and ready at 11:05.
That's an excellent suggestion. Right now it's a good time for a break. So we will be back at 11:05. Okay, thank you. Ms. Larson, I see that you're here. So you made it here right at 11:05. Now we need to find where the rest of the committee is.
That's okay. Thank you for being so patient. I guess I have no control of when a computer decides to crash.
Well, well, we've all had that experience in the last year and a half.
That's for sure. So I'm hopeful that it's going to remain up. One thing I'm not going to do is put the slides into slideshow view. I'm going to just try to operate them where I can, I've minimized the little slides on the side, but that seemed to be what triggered my computer to crash. So we'll try to avoid that.
All right.
Leanne,
well,
this is
the committee, we do have a copy of the report. Obviously, we haven't had a chance to go through it in any great detail. So your presentation will be helpful in terms of providing an overview. So
Terrific.
I see we got Representative Lyman, Representative McCray, Representative Sampson, got Senator Daughtry back, Senator Woodson, Representative Salisbury, Representative Crockett, and Representative Stearns were up, and we have Ms. Rizzler back.
I just wanted to mention quickly that these reports, for anyone who may be watching on YouTube, will be posted on the legislature's Education Committee's website. They're just
Right.
not quite up yet, but they should be by the end of the day.
And just for future reference, we're not we wouldn't be expecting to get hard copies of these reports. I mean, I have the electronic version, and with the MEPRI reports, for example, we get hard copies as well as the electronic version.
I don't think we are automatically printing and providing those, and I do think it would be difficult to necessarily mail them out
Okay.
consistently.
So if somebody wanted a hard copy, they could just print it out themselves, or they could talk to you, Hillary, about how to get one.
Sure, or reach out to the clerk, and there's possibility we could print some copies out to leave in the
Okay.
committee room for people to pick up.
Okay. Because obviously we're going to have a number of different reports, and maybe getting hard copies be difficult for each one of the reports. Representative Sampson, did you have a question before we get started?
I do have a question. I would like to know why I was completely edited out of the 12-1 meeting. There's no record of me being there. All of my questions to the commissioner about safety studies for the 5 to 11-year-olds are gone. I'm not even on the screen. And there was discussion after the commissioner spoke. I had my hand raised before she was done, and I asked the question. Representative Lyman made a comment. There were other comments made. It was completely edited, and I'm not even on the screen, and neither is Representative Lyman, and I'd like to have an answer as to why that has happened.
Okay, well, let me look into that, and I'll get back to you as soon as I find out. I have absolutely nothing. I'm not sure at all, and this is the first time it's been brought to my attention. So I will talk to Ms. Rizzler after this meeting, and we'll get back to you. Okay, anything else before we get started? Okay, is there anybody else that we need to get started? We don't. We have Ms. Larson, we have Ms. Fortin Trumbull, and we have members of the committee. Okay, Representative Lyman.
Thank you. I'm assuming, because I'm just learning that myself, I'm assuming that when you find out what the response to that is, that you will let me know as well.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yep. All right. Anything else? So I'm assuming that we are live again, and we're Ms. Larson, did you want to, it'd be helpful if you just would introduce yourself and then take it away with the report.
Happy to do that, Representative Brennan. Thank you very much. Good morning. Again, Representative Brennan, Senator Rafferty, who I don't necessarily see on the screen right now, and also all the other members of the Education and Cultural Affairs Committee. I'm Leanne Larson. I am the coordinator for the Early Learning Team in the Department of Education. And I'm very pleased to be able to have a little time with you this morning to walk you through the first of the two reports that have been asked for related to LD 138. Chelsea, are you able to pull the slides up? Great, thank you. Perfect. So as the committee will recall, LD 138 requires the Department of Education to conduct an analysis of reading assessment measures, locally established benchmarks for reading proficiency, reading achievement data, and reading instructional programs and resources being used by school administrative units in our state, with a focus on which measures, programs, resources, and evidence-based practices and educator supports are yielding student growth. So this being the first of two reports, I want to fill the committee in on all of the work that has been going on amongst the internal team within the Department of Education that's been working on this since about mid-April. And then also set you up for some of the efforts that will be underway across the rest of this school year, this summer, and into next fall before we provide you with the second report. Chelsea, if you'd like to move on to the next slide, that would be great. And while she does that, I will say that the department has had an internal team that's been made up of myself as well as specialists within our department who have strong background in early reading and literacy development, including representation from our assessment and accountability team, our standards and instructional support team, our special services team, and also representation from our ESOL bilingual specialist. So we've had a wonderful group of folks who's been able to collaboratively work on getting this study underway. To date, we have engaged in several different activities. The team has begun by conducting a thorough review of current research related to beginning reading and summarized that content. We've gathered and reviewed main summative state reading data from across the past 10 years and identified key patterns of performance. We've also begun to engage in conversations with some other states to gather information about what's working well for them and lessons they have learned in their work. Go to the next slide, Chelsea. We have designed, disseminated, and begun analysis of findings from a survey of Maine schools, conducted outreach to literacy leaders across Maine to gauge interest in a professional learning network, and continue to work with our state literacy team to finish revisions of our state literacy plan. So what I'm going to try to do in the next few slides is to provide you with a summarization of the content of the report that you received. So I'm hopeful that this will help you as you dig deeper into the report and study the findings to this point. And then certainly you're welcome to ask questions. This presentation is really designed to highlight a lot of the pieces that you're going to find within the report. And I've also on the slides tried to help you orient to where in the report this content would be located. So our internal team got the study underway by doing some work at researching beginning reading and looked at many different aspects of beginning reading, from everything from what children need to know and learn in order to develop very strong reading ability, to the kinds of supports that are important to have in place for teachers, the types of assessment that is very appropriate to informing how children are doing with their reading development and how that can inform what teachers are doing in the classroom. In the report, you'll find a synopsis of the findings for each one of these areas that you see currently on the screen. I just want to call your attention to a couple of pieces that I think are significant for you to pay attention to. One of the things that research has really borne out in the last 20 to 30 years is that children's ability to learn to read does not happen by chance. It happens with a lot of intentional instruction, a lot of examination of how that reading development is progressing over time. And it is definitely the kind of a developmental skill that requires attention to not just the foundational pieces, which are highly important in terms of learning how to decode and how the English language works, but also it's very critical to build children's background knowledge, their oral language development, their vocabulary, because it's really marrying those two pieces together that will set children up well to be able to comprehend, which is really the end product of being able to read well, is to make sense of the words that you are encountering. Interestingly, the research that we have looked at has also borne out that it's important for us to pay attention to what individual populations of children may need in order to strengthen their reading development, culturally responsive practices, thinking about aspects of equity as they relate to children's reading development, what supports they have had in their early years leading into entry into our public schools. Additionally, another piece that is staying front and center for us is the relationship of writing instruction to reading development. And what we know there is that when children write about what they are learning about, that helps them deepen their comprehension. And that's an aspect that in early reading development has not always been attended to maybe as well as it needs to be. And finally, teacher preparation and teacher knowledge is absolutely essential. The better prepared our educators are to be able to put practices that are researched and evidence-based into practice, the better that our children are going to be able to perform and achieve. We used all of what we gathered in terms of the research to help inform the design of the survey that I'll talk about later. And we will be keeping all of this in mind moving forward as we examine other aspects that you'll hear about. Go ahead, Chelsea, to the next slide. So the second big piece of the study to this point has been the department examining the state level reading data that we have access to in our department. And there are a couple of sources that we have spent time analyzing. The first of which is our own state summative assessment data for third grade. And we have looked at two sources for that. We went back and looked at the NECAP data that we, which is the former assessment that we used prior to the Empower assessment that we use currently. And then we've looked at the years of data that we've collected in that assessment. I do want to qualify and say that we have not at this point looked at performance on NWEA, which is what our schools have used for the last, last spring and again this past fall, because we have not had access to that data and it has not been made publicly available to this point. So that is a source of data that we will also be pulling in, but we will do that later this spring when we have more of that to work with. We've also used our grade 4 NAEP reading data for the past 10 years. And in both of these, we have been looking at patterns of performance across student groups and across schools. So I want to tell you a little bit more about what we have found. You can go on to the next slide, Chelsea. And then again, you'll be able to read this in much greater detail within the report. On the screen right now, you see a snapshot. This is just from the most recent administration of the Empower assessment, which was back in 2018-19 school year. And this graph shows you the performance of all students in the 3rd grade, as well as our student groups. And what you'll notice here is that just over half of our students in 3rd grade in this administration achieved at or above grade level expectations. What you will also quickly notice is that there are definitely gaps in performance among some of our student groups. In particular, our economically disadvantaged students, our English learners, our students with disabilities, and our Black or African American students all perform significantly less well in comparison to the all student group. Interestingly, too, our males perform less well than our female students do. This is a pattern that, even though I'm showing you just the 2018-19 data set, we see all the way back even into the NECAP data that we look at. So it's a consistent pattern, and one that I think really has caused us to pause and think about what more do we need to understand about these particular student populations, and what do we need to learn about practices that really help to support and accelerate students' ability as readers. Chelsea, you can go ahead on to the next slide. So one of the things that we also have done as we have examined this data is to try to take a look at particular schools in our state that are falling into some segments of achievement. So with this particular set of data from 2018-19, we took some time to look at which of the schools were, did we see 60% or more of their 3rd graders at or above state expectations versus the percentage that was falling in the 50 to 59%, the 40 to 49%, and less than 40%. And interestingly, that breaks out to just about a quarter of the schools in each one of these bands. What's also very telling when we look at this data is that we see far more schools that have high percentages of economically disadvantaged students, students identified for special education, and students who are identified as English learners in our schools that are not seeing even 40% of their 3rd graders at or above state expectations. This is very consistent with findings nationally and research that's been conducted over the last 15 years in our country. So we want to pay close attention to this. On a positive side, though, we want to spend some time really talking with schools that are seeing stronger performance and have some of the larger percentages of these populations we're concerned about who are making steady progress over time, to get a better idea of what they're doing consistently that's making a difference for students' learning. So this examination that you see here has been very helpful for us in identifying a core group of schools that we're going to begin reaching out to have those conversations in this next part of the school year. Additionally, we have looked at our NAEP data for grade 4. And this presentation that you see on the screen shows the progression since 2009. A couple of takeaways from this. Maine consistently does perform above the nation in terms of our average scale scores, but the gap between our performance in Maine and the nation's has begun to close. So there's not as great a gap as there once was. So that's something that we want to be studying more carefully. And then looking at this presentation, what you'll notice is that when we look at those same types of student groups, we also see the same patterns of performance. Please keep in mind that with the NAEP, this is a sampling of our 4th grade students that happens, as I'm sure you're aware. And for some of our student groups, the sampling is not great enough to be able to report out on in NAEP data in Maine, just because we don't have large enough populations. But those that we are sharing with you are populations that are large enough in Maine for us to report out on. And we see those same patterns in the groups that I spoke about earlier. So all of this helps us to understand more about the areas we need to dive deeper into. You can go on, Chelsea. Okay, so having looked at the research, looked at our own state data, one of the next steps that we undertook was to also look across the country at some of our the other states and try to get a perspective on what's working well for them. So one thing that we looked at were states that were similar to us in terms of size and demographics. We also looked at states that have been demonstrating steady growth over time using NAEP as an indicator, because it's the one common piece that we have nationally. After identifying states, we selected 12 that we wanted to reach out to. So far, we have conducted interviews with 6 of those states, and we have the other 6 scheduled coming up either this month or in beginning of February. And in our conversations with those states, we have begun to tease out a number of similarities. You can go to the next slide, Chelsea. So from the 6 that we have talked to so far, all of them allow local control for selection of curriculum and instructional materials, but they do provide a list of recommended high-quality programs and instructional practices. They also either strongly recommend or require universal screening for their children in K-2 for reading instruction. All of the states place a very high level of importance on teacher training and quality, and have professional learning programs, requirements in place to ensure that their teachers in the early grades have strong foundational reading knowledge and skills. Interestingly, though, what all 6 of these states were very quick to say to us is, even though we are seeing improvement in our all student category, we have the same challenges with gaps across student groups, and it continues to be of significant concern. So that, I think, was confirming for us. Also helps us to understand that this is probably work that is not just unique to Maine, but across the country, and something we all need to be pooling our resources together to better understand and address. The final big chunk of the work that we have done so far in the study has involved surveying Maine schools to get a better understanding about beginning reading. So we worked as an internal team over the course of a number of months to develop a survey to disseminate to 363 schools in our state who serve the pre-K to 3 grade span or some configuration therein. We got feedback on the survey prior to sending it out from our educational partners, as well as our state literacy team. We waited to send out the survey until the month of November, and that was very deliberate on our part. I think all of you will understand that our schools have had a lot on their plates, and to ask them to complete a survey earlier than that was just probably not possible. But I'm pleased to report that of those 363, 164 schools did complete the survey, which is about 45%, and we feel very good about that. We designed the survey in a way that was not only capturing information across all of those different areas that I spoke about earlier, but we tried to very intentionally set it up so that schools were encouraged to respond in a team approach to the survey rather than just one individual from their school trying to report. So it required them to try to come together as a team. And 113 of the 164 schools who responded did approach it that way, which was great. We also tried to set it up so that the schools were able to save their data from the survey so that they would have it moving forward. Because when we tested out the survey with a few schools, what they were quick to tell us is, you know, this was a really helpful exercise for us to walk through and see what we are doing and to think about some of the areas that maybe we haven't thought about lately. So having that data now to reflect on individually will, we hope, be very helpful to them as we move forward. So because we only received the data back at the beginning of December, our internal team has only had a little bit of time to try to delve into that. And I will tell you, there is a lot of data. In your report, you will find a copy of the survey in one of the appendices. So you might want to take a look at the kinds of questions that we had asked, so you'll have a better sense of the kinds of information that the survey generated. But there are definitely sections that we are going to need to spend more time analyzing and getting a better handle on. Chelsea, you can go, yep, thank you, to the next slide. What I'm going to highlight on the next couple of slides are just some of the areas from the survey that are a little easier for us to capture without having to get down and look at individual responses and then try to code across categories. So here's a few pieces of interest. The majority of the schools who responded, over 80% in the K-3 span, indicated that they do use a reading or literacy program of some sort in their schools. But the variety of programs that were noted was wide. And this is an area it's going to take us a while to weed through and try to make better sense of. Also, the majority, 80 to 90% of them in the K-2 span, indicated that they utilize a variety of assessment types, including screening, progress monitoring, and benchmark measures, and also for a variety of purposes, including informing ongoing instruction, diagnosing needs, evaluating their curriculum. Again, though, we are going to have to delve deeper into what are the most commonly used assessments, and then we're going to need to do some work matching that up to how are those schools performing, and then when we talk with them, what can they tell us about how they're using those programs and assessments. So those are all pieces that will be built into the interviews that we're going to begin launching into over the rest of our school year. We asked the schools to report benchmarks if they had established benchmarks. Again, not all of them did, and we're going to have to, it's going to take us a while to make sense out of that data because it's a kind of, we have to go one school at a time. 77% of the schools reported engaging in grade level or grade span data meetings, either weekly, monthly, or quarterly. 72% of the schools reported having a literacy leadership team, but of those, only 36% of them indicated that they meet regularly. Just over 45% of the schools indicated that they do have shared literacy agreements that inform the programming across their grades. So this gets at the notion of alignment of practice. And then finally, 64% of the schools responded about having some type of an interventionist position on staff. But interestingly, only 31% of those schools that responded indicate that they have a literacy specialist on their staff, and 47% that they have a literacy coach. And these are positions that research has demonstrated are really integral to helping to support reading development over time for children and support teachers in their practice. And then finally, one of the pieces that we have started to work on is determining interest in forming some kind of a literacy leaders network for educators in our state to be a part of. To get a little bit of an idea of interest in this, we started by surveying the literacy specialists and literacy coaches from across our state that we're able to identify in our staff mostly by certification levels. And we surveyed them, that was about 200 when you put the specialists and the coaches together. And we've had response from 124 of them, which is a great response out of the 200 that were surveyed, all indicating that having a network would be very beneficial, both in terms of fostering the sharing of practices and understanding in ongoing professional learning around research, but also just being able to share with one another what's working well and how they are putting practices into action that are making a difference for their students. So our intention is to move forward with this. We don't want to limit this opportunity just to literacy specialists. We want to make sure that all of our educators who could benefit from being a part of this work can be. We also really would love to be able to tap many of these folks who can be helpful to supporting other educators across our state. So this is a piece that we will continue to work on. Finally, toward the end of the report, you'll find this list, which are some of the key steps that we'll be taking over the next 8 months or so, leading up to when we'll be coming back with more formal recommendations to this committee. So as I mentioned earlier, we're going to do some deeper examination of that state achievement data, as well as identification of practices that we know research indicates have a strong impact on student achievement, and in particular across some of those populations that we are most concerned about. Part of that analysis will also lead us to conversations, and we'll be pulling in and analyzing more deeply the survey data to help us with that, as well as our state achievement data. It's very important to us as well that we have a nice representation of conversations with schools across our state. So we'll be making certain to represent regionally and also make sure that the various student populations we have concerns about are represented in those schools. Interestingly, the University of Maine is currently conducting a study about dyslexia. It's a survey that they have been collecting data around across the fall. And so we are going to be taking a look at the findings from that survey as well as we move forward. We'll be taking a look at current teacher preparation and ongoing supports, ongoing professional learning around the area of beginning reading assessment and instruction. So we have a better idea of what is actually in place that's helping support our teachers. We want to look as well at some of the broader kinds of supports that exist. We know that much of children's literacy and language development happens in those years before they're entering school. And so the coordination that we have and the understanding of how we can better support children's growth in that sector is really critical to them being ready for a great start as they're coming into school. Part of that will also involve outreach to our stakeholder groups. We will be continuing to coordinate with our state literacy team as we launch our updated plan, and have already poised them to help us identify some of the key priorities that we're going to need to attend to in order to really advance positive growth in beginning reading and literacy. And all of that will help set us up to come back to you with some very specific recommendations next year. So I'm going to stop there. That's a lot of information.
Ms. Larson, thank you very much. And waiting the 5 minutes was worth it.
I'm sorry about that.
And I have to say, this report certainly meets and exceeds all the expectations that I had last year when we had this discussion within the committee. And both fortunately and unfortunately, the data kind of shows the good and also the major challenges that we face in the state of Maine, similar again to other states in terms of addressing these problems. But at this point, we'll go to questions, and Representative Salisbury.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Ms. Larson. That is a really great study. Like Representative Brennan said, it is very concerning, and I appreciate the effort that's being put into sort of deal with those issues. I'm wondering how will, once the full impact of these last few years of the pandemic, how are we going to sort of morph that into all this data? You know, once we've received this data, we'll have to basically, I would guess, update some of this data and these issues once we've gotten that data from new results, right?
Yes, that's certainly we're going to pull the data in that we're collecting now from the assessment that we're using. I think the other place that there's a real opportunity for us to be able to pull some of that in will be in the conversations that we'll have with the schools moving forward. Obviously, we're not going to be able to talk to every school in the state, but certainly in the conversations that we'll be having, asking them to talk with us about what they're noticing about their students, what kinds of supports they're putting in place that are making a difference for them, will be another helpful source of information for that. And, you know, I think what we always try to keep in mind for our youngsters is that, yes, reading instruction and development is hugely important, but so is the entire child. And right now, just making sure that kids are healthy, safe, cared for, learning every day is very, very important for us to keep learning moving forward. And some of the pieces we're probably going to notice over time, there may be some gaps that we're going to have to address. But it's hard to tease that out until we see how kids respond now that they're back in the classroom. And, you know, kids can be pretty resilient. So hopefully we'll get those supports in place. And one part I didn't talk about specifically in the presentation this morning, but I can point out a couple of things that might also be helpful on this question. The way we set up the survey reflected what we call a multi-tiered system of support framework, which was very intentional on our part, because one of the things we're trying to reinforce for our schools is understanding how important just what we call tier 1 or universal instruction is for our youngsters. So making sure that all of our students are getting really good, high quality instruction, and then making sure to be putting those additional levels of intervention support in place. And that's an area that I think we're going to need to do more work in the coming years to help figure out where are some of those gaps and what are the interventions that will most appropriately help to accelerate student learning, especially in the gaps that we've discovered.
Thank you.
Representative Crockett.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Ms. Larson, for a very thorough and deep dive on this. I'm hoping you can clarify some of those percentages that you stated for me. You know, when I see participation of 45%, you know, I don't feel that comfortable with such a low number. Yet, at the same time, I'm curious what percent of schools actually have ready literacy programs? Because I'm suspecting those that don't have it may have been the bulk of those who did not respond.
I would only be able to speculate about that. And I'm not sure that the lack of response from the other 55% of the schools is necessarily because of not having programs, so much as it is just being fatigued and not having the time and energy to do the job they need to do with the students in front of them and respond to this for the department. Quite honestly, our schools have had a number of surveys provided to them for other reports this fall. And I think in some of our schools where it's the same groups of people responding all of the time because that's who's doing the job, it's tough to try to accomplish all of that. So I hear your question, and I wish that I had a better, a crystal ball to be able to answer why they didn't necessarily respond. But my hunch would be it has more to do with fatigue and maybe lack of capacity. That said, even though we have that data from just the 45%, we've got the student achievement data from all of these schools. And one of the things that we will definitely be matching up is which of the schools we've seen that have consistently had that strong achievement. And we'll reach to them even if they didn't respond to the survey. So we'll be able to collect more information that way, and that will add to the bank. So that might be a question I'll be able to respond better to in another few months when we've completed the conversations.
Well, I definitely look forward to that. Yet I really appreciate and respect your candor on addressing the question. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Senator Woodson.
Yes, thank you, sir. Very good report, Mr. Larson. The information you gave was based on a 2012 to 2019 data, I believe you said.
Mm-hmm.
Did you go back to an earlier, seems like we do these reports every X number of years. Did you go back to, say, 2000 to 2010? Was there a report, and was there very similar, if you did look at it, was there very similar issues in that report?
For this report, we didn't go back beyond 2012. I can share with the committee that the Department of Education back around 1999, 2000 did commission a study of schools that was similar to this one that we are engaged in right now. And that was something that our internal team took a look at initially so that we could see some of the processes that had been used, some of the strategies to collecting information, and so that we would have an idea of some of the themes that came out of that study. So we are definitely keeping that in mind as we are moving forward, but we didn't go back beyond 2012 into the data. One of the things that changed around that time was that the state of Maine shifted away from our individual assessment of children on the MEA at the time to use of the NECAP, which was the assessment that we developed with some of the other New England states. So we wanted to try to remain consistent in looking at that. And then as we've shifted now into the Empower. So we didn't go back beyond that.
Okay, and it just seems like we're always treading water. My fear is that we come out with a report and recommendations, and then we go down, we change administrations, we have different legislators, we do this, we do that, and And then 10 years from now, we do another study and we find that reading is still low. I think we just need to, and this isn't I guess it's just a rhetorical or whatever, but I mean, we need to take this seriously and to make sure that the results of this report is made known going forward in the future. We have to address this and not always report that, hey, we're behind the 8 ball. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Senator Whitson. Representative Blyman, I know you have a special interest in this area, if not expertise, and I didn't know if you had specific questions you might want to ask.
Thank you. Not at this point.
Okay. Representative Blyman, you spent what, 35 years teaching?
I spent 36 years teaching and was involved with a district that was extremely active and in assessing literacy data, intervention groups with weekly evaluation and goal setting for students, and we had some amazing outcomes. So yeah, this is a topic that I am very passionate about as an educator. Thank you.
Great. Senator Whitson, did you have a follow-up question?
No, I don't really. I'm just concerned about taking care of business, and it just gets lost in a shuffle over time.
Well, Representative Dodge does have a question, but before we get to that, I just want to say that Senator Whitson summarized my feelings exactly. And I think we all have similar sentiments and want to make sure that, I mean, the numbers, again, Maine is not out of step with a national context, but when you break down the numbers, we have real areas of concerns with close to 50% of our population not reading the way we would like them to be reading by the time they're in 3rd grade. And I assure you that we'll continue to have this discussion and to follow up in a way that we do move the needle in some meaningful way. Representative Dodge.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Ms. Larson, for your wonderful report. I just have a couple of quick questions that I don't expect you to answer right now, but maybe you can email me and we can have a richer discussion at some point. Just as point of information, my mom was a 1st grade teacher. I'm alarmed about not having standard benchmarks. If I am understanding the information you shared, this is of concern if we aren't asking schools to meet a certain level of achievement. Do we need to go back a little bit to our standards-based education files and notebooks and make some suggestions? That's number one. Number two, I'm really interested in where we are currently with phonics, whole language, spelling, comprehension, all of those fun things. And I'll tell you a funny story about my mom teaching phonics. When they pulled it out as a 1st grade teacher, we heard at the dinner table, I don't care what they're telling us to teach. I'm still going to teach phonics. So I'm a little interested in that also. I think that's all for now, but thank you so much for your information. And my other question was about information about books in the hands of kids pre-K to 3, not just in schools, but in our communities, and how that works currently and might work in the future. Thank you.
You're welcome. I've written all of those down, and I can certainly have a conversation. And please know that the benchmark piece is something we'll be keenly aware of as we move forward in our conversations. Just as a little clarification there, I think as you saw in the data from the schools that responded, the vast majority of them are using some form of assessment. Most assessments come with some recommended benchmarks for particular grade levels. Schools have some obviously leeway in determining whether they're going to set the mark there or not. I think the question that we have to get, figure out how to answer better is, are those benchmarks leading to that strong reading ability by third grade, right? How is that progression supporting children? So that's high on our list. And what we know too from research is that teaching children phonological awareness, phonics, letter sound information is absolutely essential and has to happen. So that's a message that we give all of the time, but it's also one piece of a larger picture of instruction. And I'd be very happy to talk with you about lots of ways that we get books into the hands of kids, but the need to do that even better exists.
Ms. Larson, I got just one quick question, actually two quick questions, but I do want to say, I think the first two paragraphs of your report kind of summarize my thoughts about this. So thank you for putting those in the way that you did. Secondly, the question, you talked about the number of school districts that had literacy specialists and/or literacy coaches, and maybe Representative Stearns knows the answer to this, but are those positions or those capacities, are those eligible cost under EPS?
Are you asking me the question, Representative?
If you know the answer.
EPS does not have a defined category for literacy specialist, I don't believe. Okay. However, remember that all those categories are there to come up with a number, and it is up to the local school officials to determine how to use that budgetary number in the best way. And many schools have chosen that pathway as a good expenditure for their dollars. And they've also used different types of grants and various other programs to establish literary coaches, literacy coaches, and specialists in that manner. So per se, in the formula, I don't believe that there is a category like there is for school nurses and librarians. But I've been out of the game for almost a decade now.
Well, let me just say, in your opinion, Representative Stearns or Ms. Larson, if that was more specific in the formula, would that potentially lead us to have more school districts that have literacy coaches and learning specialists?
Representative, I love it when you give me the opportunity to offer my opinion. And my opinion is that we've looked at this data repeatedly. One of the frustrations, first of all, the highest correlation that you will find in literacy achievement has to do with property value and median family income. Right. That tells us a story. There's a tremendous correlation there. Yeah. One of the greatest frustrations, I live with a teacher, literacy specialist, if you will. Oh my goodness, it's interesting. And one of the frustrations is the time spent outside of school on, and the focus on understanding that reading is so critical to future gains, no matter what your life is going to bring you. Everyone on this screen today knows that. How do you get that through so that we're having constant practice and reinforcement at home? And that's what our folks spend an enormous amount of their time doing, just trying to crack the code on that. No answer here, but I firmly believe that 80% of a student's academic achievement is defined by factors outside of school, and we need to take our 20% very seriously. But so don't ask me for an opinion again if you want to have lunch on time.
Well, I appreciate your background, your experience, and your input on this. And I think the research would support the comments that you just made. And I think that's why it's particularly important for us to, as you say, focus on what we can do with that 80%. I mean, the 20% that we have within the school, 30 or 20%, and then recognize how do we try to influence that other 70% in a positive way. And we might not solve that all today right now, but I do think that Ms. Larson, the report that she's done starts to allow the committee to understand the challenge that we face. And I'm looking forward to the recommendations in November about where we can go. And then I would ask at this point, Ms. Risler, the bill as written would be similar to the CTE bill, which would allow the committee, if it wanted to make to take some action in interim basis, we could do that. And that it would also allow the opportunity later on after the November report.
Asking about the original bill?
Correct.
LD 138. I can pull up the exact language, but yes, the committee would have authority to report out a bill if you'd like to.
Okay, thank you. So, Ms. Larson, again, I think we're unanimously on the committee in agreement that you did a great job with the report, and we really appreciate it. I would ask members of the committee if you have particular areas that you would like Ms. Larson and the department as they move forward between now and November to please get in touch with either Hillary or Chelsea or Ms. Larson and say, can you take a look at this? I know Representative Crockett had a question, and ask them to have that available either for the committee in a short run or by November. But I believe that you have captured our attention, and I think this is an issue that we will continue to pursue. So thank you very much.
Welcome.
At this point, we're right at 12 o'clock. Are there any other questions from members of the committee for Ms. Risler, for Ms. Fortin Trimble, or for myself or anybody else? We are scheduled to our next meeting of the committee is next Tuesday, where we will have public hearings on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. I think Ms. Risler may have mentioned it to you, but we did get approval by the presiding officers to meet 5 days a week as necessary. And due to the influence of Representative Stearns, we have decided to start meeting on Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. And then as the workload unfolds and we get a better sense of what is happening, we may have to go into Monday and to go into Friday. But Senator Woodson, Senator Rafferty, and Representative Stearns and myself thought that starting at this point, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and try to condense as much as we can into those 3 days would allow people to plan for Monday and Friday in a way that recognizes the fact that you have other things in your life that also might need to be accomplished. But as we approach deadlines in February and March, we may have to push things a little bit more quickly. The other consideration that was mentioned earlier, that because we don't have Sam Seneff with us this session, we have to give Hillary a day or two to turn things around, and try to meet 5 days a week doesn't give her the opportunity to do any of the work that she needs to do in terms of preparation for the committee. So we're trying to be sensitive to everybody's schedule and at the same time recognize the fact that we have some limitations in terms of staffing that influences our schedule. But if people have ideas about how this could be scheduled or how you want it to be scheduled, please let myself know or Senator Rafferty. And again, if you have particular issues or bills, studies that you want us to try to help accommodate your schedule, just please let us know. And we did move fairly quickly on scheduling public hearings, and we have heard back from 2 or 3 people that next week isn't going to work, and that's okay. We'll move those to another time. But as everybody knows, in the second session, things do not start at it's a sprint. And it starts at a sprint, and it moves very, very quickly. And obviously with the pandemic, the virus, and the uncertainty about whether or not we'll be continuing to meet on Zoom, hybrid, or in person, just adds a little bit to the complexity of us getting to April, to the adjournment date successfully. So at this point, I'd ask Senator Woodson if you had anything to say, or Representative Stearns.
No, I don't. Very good morning, and I appreciate everybody's attendance and help.
Representative Stearns. And Senator Daughtry, simply because we don't have Senator Rafferty, I want to make sure that we give an opportunity for the Senate to weigh in.
I think Senator Woodson covered it pretty well, but excited to be
Okay.
here, excited to get working, and glad to be back in the swing of things.
All right. Well, Happy New Year to everybody, and thank you for your participation today. And Representative Dodge, you had a concluding comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and it's been great to see everyone, and thank you for our work today. My question is around a chance for us to have a quick caucus and when that might happen, please. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of your afternoon, folks.
Okay. Representative Crockett.
Yeah, I just wanted to give a big warm welcome, of course, to our new staff person, Eli. Obviously, I love the name Eli. Has nothing to do with my other businesses, but he is a fan, so that goes a long way. And also, I found out yesterday when I met him that he lives on Munjoy Hill, where I grew up in Portland, Maine. So he's a rock star. He's going to be great. Glad to have him.
And I'm sure you will make a walking tour available of Munjoy Hill for him if he likes.
Well, he knows it pretty well already. He lives just literally a block from where I grew up. So we chatted about that a little bit yesterday.
Great. And Representative Dodge, you and I can talk. Anything else? Seeing nothing, we'll see everybody next Tuesday. Take care.